a huge portion of these people are religious zealots, and they have absolutely no idea about how their stuff is received. No, I think in many instances they don't care because they have God on their side. Let's play this clip from Charlie Kirk. Same situation where he is just enraged that Lindsey Graham actually advocated doing what they have been basically arguing is popular, right? I mean, you never heard them ever say like, well, stopping abortion. They would always say people don't want abortion. I mean, that was their argument. In fact, we heard this from centrist politicians. We heard, and writers. You and I remember Hillary Clinton in 2004 really pushing this idea that the Democrats have to moderate on abortion because it's icky for people, this and that. And now 65% of the population saying 15-week ban. No, we want people to be able to decide if they need an abortion with their doctor, period, end of story. Here's Charlie Kirk. He's just enraged by this.
Now, I just want to reemphasize this. I am 100% pro-life. I am outspokenly pro-life. I am so pro-life that I'll debate anybody on the topic at any time. The only exception I could possibly imagine is life of the mother. And I will defend that position morally, scientifically, and biologically, and philosophically. But introducing
Pause it for 1 second. What it would take, how many percentage points would Charlie Kirk have to be if he believes that abortion is murder, 100% abortion is murder. He is so dedicated to that position that he will debate anybody
at any time.
But what he won't do is support a bill being introduced that would stop murdering potentially thousands and thousands of babies right away. I mean, right away. If you think it's murder and you want to sit
stupid.
Yeah. Well, right.
Lindsey Graham said he wanted to. Lindsey Graham said
5 a.m. I'll be there for that debate. You're going to make it at 3:30 in the morning because you think I'm going to be tired? I'm going to sleep in the afternoon and be up for that debate. That's how dedicated I am to this.
Maybe he'll debate you, Sam.
They're so into debate lord stuff. Lindsey Graham said he introduced this bill so they could have a debate.
Exactly. Lindsey Graham did this because he wanted to stake out that we have a reasonable position on it. That was the agenda. He knew it wasn't going to pass. He wanted it to create conversation. And these people want nothing said about it whatsoever. Play Charlie Kirk.
The mother. And I will defend that position morally, scientifically, and biologically, and philosophically. But introducing a piece of legislation that you do not have the votes for, not even close to having the votes for, it's not going to pass, is the only rationale is that you want this election to be about abortion? And if it was Josh Hawley, I would say, okay, or Ted Cruz, why is Lindsey Graham 25 days out from ballots going out, galloping in and saying, we need a federal abortion ban? Really, where have you been, Lindsey Graham? That feels like election interference. And I say this as someone who is so pro-life. I would love a total abortion ban. 15 weeks is not enough, but I'm also not dumb. 25 days out from ballots going out, the Democrats are applauding. Thank you, Lindsey Graham, for making this issue about abortion. They're enthusiastic that Lindsey Graham is now making this all about the one issue Democrats actually can win suburban women on. I wish that wasn't the case. I wish that the country was as pro-life as I am.
I mean, he's not dumb. He knows that the American public disagrees with this. He knows that it's not a winning issue for Republicans. And he also knows when a human fetus when he sees it, except for when it's also a dolphin fetus. But that's another point. He had a little problem with that. But more importantly, I mean, he's being honest here. He's being honest. One of the rare moments, probably, where he knows that. And what's fascinating too is, what else do they have? What else do they have? I mean, Donald Trump won the presidency because, and like I said, there's a lot of reasons. Hillary Clinton made some mistakes as a candidate, had a lot of baggage as a candidate, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things, the most underestimated reason, was because that Merrick Garland seat was empty. And because Donald Trump held up a sheet of paper that said, I got a list from the Heritage Foundation. Everybody knew, the one thing you could have said about every single person on that list, they are all for overturning Roe v. Wade.
Yep.
And everybody knew. And I would say the core of the Republican Party came out. Those evangelical, right-wing evangelicals came out for that one reason right there. That's why they came out, because they wanted this abortion. So, the idea that this wasn't, an electoral motivation factor, like, the problem is they caught the car and people realize, like, they are this crazy. And like, this is the thing that they are starting to realize, like, we're crazy. Like, in the eyes of the majority, we're crazy, and we got to be a little bit on the DL about this.
Well, they used to know that, there used to be, you always had, they've been doing this for a long time, and you had them, kind of, keep this a little ixnay on the incest and exceptions for incest and rape stuff. Don't go there. People don't like that. So just, we'll deal with it down the road. there was always this sort of implicit thing, which is just don't push this too far. So on some level, they had to know that most, the polling's always been pretty consistent, although ever since the decision, the support for Roe versus Wade has grown. The support for abortion rights has grown, which is very interesting to me, because it's like, what did it take, people? What were you thinking here? But whatever, I'll take it. But they had to have realized that this was not a popular position. They did not care, because this was working for them. Just on the purely cynical level, if you look at it, you're seeing guys like Kirk and Walsh, who, look, they're operatives essentially, right? Right. They're not sincere evangelical Christians. They're political operatives. And, you can see there where they're sort of recognizing that there's been that there's an error in their strategy. Think about it. Think about how much better off they would have been if they had not done what they did with the Supreme Court and just left that seat, given that seat to, say, Merrick Garland, who isn't in any way not a far left kind of, rabble-rousing, swashbuckling progressive. He probably would have been the kind of guy that sort of, a Stephen Breyer type, maybe, not bad, but not great.
Business friendly and
yeah. He would have been fine. And if they had let that seat go to Merrick Garland, and then they would have had, Kavanaugh, or maybe they wouldn't have Kavanaugh. They'd have put Gorsuch into that seat. I don't know. And then you would have had Amy Coney Barrett. You wouldn't have had this, there's a monolith in the Supreme Court now that is uncontrollable, clearly, because you can tell by what John Roberts tried to do and couldn't do it. He doesn't have control of that court. It's Justice Alito and Thomas's court. They are the ones who are running things. And so it's out of their hands now. They overplayed their hand on a lot of this stuff. And I think we're going to see this. Unfortunately for the country, that may not be very good for them politically over time, but for the country, it's an absolute disaster, obviously. It's an absolute disaster, and as is this abortion ruling. And as I always hesitate, because I write about this and I'm thinking, I'm sort of enjoying the fact that, the Democrats have an advantage on the issue, and that it's maybe propelling them into maybe holding on to the Congress, or at the very least, reducing their losses, and, maybe keeping a hold of the Senate, which would be very important. But at the same time, come on, look at the suffering that's happening to people all over the country in these red states. And just this week, West Virginia passed a draconian abortion law that, very few exceptions, and they're second guessing doctors all over the place, saying, well, no, that doesn't really qualify as the life of the mother. We think she ought to wait and see till she's really on death's door. She needs to be gasping and unable to breathe before we're going to accept that. This is the kind of stuff that's happening in these states, especially the sort of antediluvian southern states where they're just really flying backwards into the 1700s. And so it's awful, and I'm glad that there's an advantage for Democrats politically, because it says something about the country that sort of relieves me a little bit, that people haven't completely gone so cynical that they don't care anymore. But the actual consequences of this horrifying decision it just kills me every time I read these stories about people. It's
horrible. And we talked about that story about cancer patients not getting treated until they're sick enough to sufficiently get outside of legal jeopardy, perhaps. Texas did not report their maternal deaths this year. They're holding off until after the election. I imagine there's a reason for that as well, because they've been operating under this abortion ban now almost since December. So they may have seen an uptick. We don't know.